Thank you for joining us. Our position is to impartially present a broad spectrum of views in our universal hope for peaceful solutions. And our guest today is Brigadier General Israela Oron of the Israel Defense Forces, an analyst and commentator on security and strategic affairs. She has served as Deputy National Security Advisor at Israel's National Security Council and has often briefed the Israel Cabinet on a number of matters. She was responsible for the development of the Israel government's position on various matters relating to the Camp David summit. General Oron's last military posting was that of Commander of the Israel Defense Forces Women's Corps, and today she is active on issues relating to the peace process and will share her views on these and other matters following these messages. With us now is Brigadier General Israela Oron. It's a pleasure and a privilege to have you on the Shalom Show.
Same here.
May I ask you, what brings you to the United States at this time?
I'm on a speaking tour with J Street. I was asked to meet some people here, down here in Miami and in other places in the United States, and to express my views with regard to the situation in the Middle East, and especially about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
General, the organization you're here to represent, advocating a two-state solution, one for the Palestinians and one for Israel, many people regard that concept as naive, and they say that the Arabs don't want peace and giving back more territory doesn't lead to anything but more rocket attacks against Israel. And people criticize the organization you're here to speak for. What are your thoughts on that?
It's very strange to me because our Prime Minister, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, declared in his famous speech at Bar Ilan that he is in favor of a two-state solution. So I really don't understand, and he is from the Likud party, which is a right-wing party in Israel. And if Bibi Netanyahu thinks that this is the only solution, and it works for Israel, and it serves the interests of the state of Israel, I don't know exactly how come that people here in the United States think in a different way. I'm very happy that the right wing in the United States and in Israel adopted the views that we in the left parties in Israel are holding for the last 20 years.
It's interesting that Uri Avneri, many years ago, advocated these ideas and was severely criticized for that. What are your thoughts on Uri Avneri's comments way back then?
I think that people like Uri Avneri and people that have a great vision and can foresee what's going to happen next are very unique and very rare, unfortunately, in the Israeli politics. We are facing every once in a while this stage where Israeli politicians are looking back and regretting not taking steps and not taking advantage of opportunities. And we call it the history of the history of the Israeli politics is the history of missed opportunities. And I wish that people will think more like Uri Avneri. I mean, looking forward and seeing what's going to happen if we will not take some very serious and very courageous steps. Unfortunately, we don't have the right leaders to do it right now.
You say missed opportunities, and I remember interviewing one of Israel's most brilliant leaders, Abba Evan, and he said the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. What are your thoughts on their missing opportunities in the current times?
I think that this is the blame to be shared by both sides, the Israeli politician and the Palestinian politician, because I think we are short of politicians that are brave enough to decide to make the right concession and what it is required to do really a final state agreement between both sides. Because they are afraid what will be next, they are afraid of if they will gain the right coalition in the next elections, they are afraid of many sources and many opposition in their sides, I mean the Palestinian side, they are afraid of the Hamas, and in the Israeli side, they're of course afraid of the right-wing parties. So they are not brave enough to do the necessary step towards a peace agreement.
The people who criticize the organization that you represent will say they respect General Oron's sincerity, but they would wonder, hey, Israel gave back the Gaza Strip all of these millions of dollars worth of wonderful greenhouses. At the moment after these gifts were given, they smashed them all and trashed everything. And people who argue against you say, giving concessions just leads to more missile attacks. How do we really stop the missile attacks, in your opinion?
First of all, I don't know if it's common to admit that you were wrong on a TV interview, but I was wrong when because when it came to the unilateral withdrawal from Gaza. I thought that this is a very important and significant move towards a peace agreement, and I was wrong. And the reason that I was wrong was that I believed that something like that could work. I don't believe anymore in unilateral steps. It has to be an agreement, it has to be agreed upon by both sides. If it's not agreed upon, it was nothing. So I strongly believe that everything now should be agreed upon by both sides, and I believe that we have now an opportunity, because the steps that the Palestinian government is taking are very serious ones with regard to the financial system, with regard to the security system. And I do believe that we have to sit down and to start talking seriously about the core issues, because otherwise it will not get better.
Another point of view is with regards to those people who claim one cannot trust agreements made with Arab regimes. On the other hand, we have a peace agreement in place with Jordan and Egypt, which is lasting and working reasonably well. So I would say that it is probably possible to trust agreements to be made in the future. But those detractors who claim that it is naive to expect that, and that one should not make agreements with Syria or give back the Golan Heights and invite future attacks on northern Israel settlements. What are your thoughts with regards to how trustworthy agreements with Arab regimes can be?
People that don't want to make peace with our enemies or with our neighbors will say anything. They will say that, okay, we have a peace agreement with Egypt, but it's a very cold agreement. I prefer a cold agreement over a hot war. And we have this peace with Jordan. We share the same interest with Jordan right now. We share the same interest with other Arab countries. And we should explore everything. And we should do whatever it's possible towards a peace agreement, because it's always better than a war. And if you say that we cannot trust our enemies, I don't think so. Because at the end of the day, you have to judge the agreements if it's based upon the mutual interest of both sides. It will work. If it's something that is not agreed upon, it will fail.
We are all facing a reality today that people cannot ignore, but reality changes. Like 80 years ago, there was a different reality, and some of our audience would like to know your views on the history of the conflict before actually there was a Palestinian people. They consider the vast Arab world, larger than the territory of the United States, as more than enough space for Muslim and Arabs to live in peace, and with a fraction of the money they could have spent on warfare and destroying Israel and destroying the IDF. With a fraction of that money, they could have built wonderful towns all over the Middle East and all lived in peace. So they say, why do they need Israel? What are your thoughts on the history of the conflict?
Sometimes people are misled by the idea that all the Arabs are the same. I mean, this is one big nation. There are many Arab countries. They are not united. They differ in many ways. And also the Muslim world is not united. There are Shia Muslims, there are Sunni Muslims, there are Muslims that are even not Arab, like the Turks. So when you are speaking about the Arab world, it's really a divided world, and they are not responsible for anything that is happening between us and the Palestinian state. However, the extreme Muslim countries are taking advantage of the fact that there is a conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, and using it for their purposes. And one example is Iran. What exactly does Iran have to do with Israel? We even don't have any border between us and Iran. But Iran is using in a very cynical way the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, appearing as the protector of the Palestinians and trying to develop a nuclear power using our conflict. So the continuation of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict gives a lot of fuel to countries like Iran to develop their own nuclear abilities and their own inspiration, political inspiration on the expense of Israel. From the historical point of view, I think that some people, even people in Europe and other places, really do not understand that there was never a Palestinian state. Never. This territory was occupied by the Turks, by the British, by the Jordanian in 1967 in a war that we didn't start. I mean, we started it, but after we were threatened by all our neighbors, we occupied the West Bank and Gaza. But we didn't want to occupy West Bank and Gaza. And now the Palestinian people, that are the people that were born in this territory, have their own national aspiration, and they would like to have their own national state. In this case, it goes together with the Israeli interest, because if we will not have a Palestinian state along with the Israeli state, we are endangering all the Zionist project. Why? Because of us, we wish to be a democratic and a homeland for the Jewish people. We cannot be both if there will not be a Palestinian state. Because if you don't want the people, the citizens in Israel, to have equal rights and to vote for the Knesset, it means that we will not be democratic. If they will give votes to everybody between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, will not be the homeland of the Jewish people anymore. And not this choice, not the other choice, is something that any Israeli citizen would wish that we'll have in the future. So we need to compromise on this. We need to negotiate with the Palestinians. We need to come to an agreement that will allow us to keep the Zionist dream, meaning a democratic and a homeland for the Jewish people.
People would argue with you that even if Israel was destroyed, God forbid, that Islamic aspirations to take over the world, resurrected from ancient times, evident perhaps with terrorist attacks all over the world, not necessarily only against Israel, they would say that the peaceniks are naive, and there's a bigger picture here. What would you say to those people?
Maybe the peaceniks are naive, but the other side doesn't give any reasonable or realistic alternative. What exactly do you mean by being naive that we would like to reach some kind of an agreement? What is the alternative? Because the alternative is to stay in the current situation. The current situation gets us nowhere. And when I say nowhere, it means this is a polite way to say it's getting us into a complete disaster. Because this situation is not going to last forever. This is an illusion. Because the Palestinians are not going to sit back and to see how our leaders and sometimes their leaders are avoiding to do the.
Do you think that once a Palestinian state is created and Israel is living side by side with the Palestinian state, do you believe that Islamic terrorism will stop in other parts of the world? Will there be no more 9/11s against the United States?
Although I'm naive, I'm not so naive. I don't think that the inspiration of Al-Qaeda, for example, or the Islamic Jihad will stop if there will be a Palestinian state along with Israel. But we are speaking about probabilities.